of locusts, so saith the wise Alondo. When shadows descend upon the lands, our divine Lord will walk alongside us as equals. So saith the great Alondo. The world shall wander the earth, and such a pestilence will follow in his wake, and all who know of his passing shall be struck down by the plague.
Welcome back to Mages and Murderdads, the best show dedicated to the games beyond Baldur's Gate. This is episode 60, and we're playing Torment, Tides of Numenera. I'm Cameron.
I'm Danny, and this is, I think this might be the final episode of Torment, Tides of Numenera.
We were meant to record this episode a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
And would you like to sum up what occurred when I spoke to you at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on that fateful day 1 week ago?
There are two canonical instances of rage quitting in range touch history. The first happened as I slammed down like a big metal grate. The first happened, God, probably sometime in 2010 or 2011, when Cameron and I, long before, Range Touch brand existed, Cameron and I were on a PvP circle in Minecraft, a PvP server, and we had created a little fortress behind a waterfall, and we were mining and we were exploring, and as Cameron was outside getting some wood, a person in full diamond armor and like a diamond sword just like chopped him up, and we appear, and then he went down into the mine and found me, and he did that to me, and then he took all of our stuff. And we appeared maybe, a 20-minute walk away at the spawn point. And Cameron just like, I heard like a drawer being closed or some other like sound of finality. And he was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And that was the last time we ever played a PvP server on Minecraft. And the second happened 1 week ago when I was told, oh yeah, it's about another hour. And I played like an hour.
To be fair, it only took me, if I look at my video file, all the way through the credits I have recorded, an hour and 20 minutes. Okay?
Yeah.
So I wasn't trying to steer you wrong here.
But I played and I thought, oh, I think I'm just almost there. I'm not even going to finish. We'll just record. I think I'm just one screen away. And we start, and Cameron said, and I described where I am, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm trying to get some sphincter muscles relaxed. And Cameron tells me, you've still got an hour. And I just lost it. And I basically implied that this game is just a nexus of suffering that is plaguing the planet.
You said, I wish that I'd had the foresight to just begin recording audio. Because you said not only that this game is bad, but you said maybe every isometric RPG is inherently bad, and then you said if I experience even a little bit of this kind of emotion playing the next game, we might not do another one.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. That
so
it was.
You really went scorched earth with your feelings.
Yeah, it was. It was a bad time. So here we are. I gave myself another 2 hours. I've completed this game. And I will never play it or after this episode think about it again, because this is the beauty of having a podcast. You don't have to remember anything because it's just recorded somewhere.
Yeah. And you know what? I will say this, because I've beaten this game before. I reviewed this game when it came out. And as I've said several times in the show, I just don't really remember these things, some of these things that happened in the game. And now at the end, I think maybe I forgot them on purpose.
Oh, God.
Like, maybe I scorched them from my mind.
Did you go back and read your review?
No.
Do you know what the gist of your review was? I feel like you probably remember writing it, right?
I do. I mean, I think I liked it. I remembered liking it. Hold on, let me go. Let's do this right now. see what my takeaway is. Headline: Torment, Tides of Numenera is like playing through a novel. I did not write that headline.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to ask you how much editorial control you get over headlines in the various, publications you appear in.
Basically none. This is for Pace Magazine, of course. Boop, 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 boop. I say that it... So basically, looking at... I do remember writing this. So I ended up comparing it quite a bit to other things that I was interested in at the time. So I say that it's like Brandon Graham's Prophet comic books, and it's like The Fifth Element a little bit, and it's a little bit like Perdido Street Station. And I said it had a lot of like conceptual scope. So I think I was like kind of enchanted by the Ninth World stuff. I talk about how crises are pretty cool, and I still think they are cool in a general sense, even if they don't work out great all the time.
Your last sentence of this review is, if only everything was this way.
Yeah. I said it's an excellent game that delivers an engaging story, which I guess is probably true. And that's what's expected and desired from Torment, Tides of Numenera. Sometimes it's clunky and other times it is sluggish, but mostly it's an engaging game that rarely disappoints. I think that's probably all true. I think that, at the time, I had not been mainlining isometric RPGs for 3 years. So I think my context is a little bit different. Yeah. I think I like it more than Planescape.
Yeah, so this would have been... You wrote this review over 2 years ago.
Yeah, this is 2017.
Yeah, the beginning of 2017. There has been a lot of, like... You've had a lot of this genre experience since then.
Since then, yeah. I would say the last time that I played one of these games before this would have been Planescape, and that would have been in like 2012, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. So it'd been 5 years since I'd really like gotten into one of these games, and then immediately after this, basically, we started Mages and Murderdads.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, do you want to?
Well, an important bit of just additional thing, I played this right after I played Divinity Original Sin, which I really did not care for.
And Divinity Original Sin, I think, is probably outside the scope of this podcast in a lot of ways. I just don't think that it's in that lineage of games. I think this game's only admitted because Planescape, right?
Yeah, I think Divinity Original Sin 2 probably is closer, weirdly enough. Just because it doubled down on kind of narrative stuff, where our first one I thought was kind of narratively light. Anyway, that's a long thing of going through my own review of a thing, but that's all to say. I think this review is still correct. Even if I think in context it is, I have different feelings about the game.
Sure. I think that you gave the story summary last time.
Yeah, and people hated it.
Well, people are just confused. I'm seeing people in the Discord saying, "I have no idea what's going on." They're deeply confused. Let me set them all straight. Okay.
Do it.
All right. I'm going to do it a little bit different this time. I'm going to try.
The final episode for this game, so go hard on it.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory. So there is an entity called... Okay, let's see. Back up even further. This game takes place in the Ninth World, which is a fantastical world dreamed up by Monty Cook. And here's the idea. Deep time. This is the 9th iteration. Like the 9th time civilizations have kind of clawed their way back from the dirt. So we've got a lot of mysterious technologies that are virtually indistinguishable from magic. There's a lot of interdimensional beings and strange cults, and so all that stuff. In any case, a big part of this world is this entity called the Changing God. And the Changing God is this very powerful being that in some small part, or like in large part, is powerful because the Changing God is virtually immortal due to the fact that the Changing God is always creating like new bodies to inhabit, to continue their life, and they continue to like grow their collective memory. And when they're done with the body, they just cast that body off, and that being continues to live in some ways like a fragment of this reincarnation divinity, right?
Yes.
We begin the game as the last cast off, so the most recent time the Changing God, you know, performed like this metamorphosis type deal, and we begin the game and we slam into the earth. We're in this situation where we slam into the earth. We gain consciousness as we're falling. There's this broken contraption called a resonance chamber. We meet some people. I think oddly enough, the people we meet at the game isn't like super story important. So I'm gonna like I'll try to like get more into like the texture of the plot rather than the characters. So we break this resonance chamber, and at first we're just kind of stumbling around the world. We're trying to figure out what's going on. What is the deal? We learn a great deal about the Changing God. We learn a great deal about the various kind of organizations which represent the Changing God and kind of the other movers and shakers. And we know from the very first time when we crash into the earth that there's Allegorn and Calistig, I believe. Calistigus.
So I've been saying Callistiga this whole time. And
because that's how it's spelled.
Yep. One of my NPCs said her name. Calistigus.
So those two, when we land, we find out, oh, this thing is a resonance chamber. It's important. If we could get this fixed, it would somehow... ... So could you fill me in at this point in the plot? Tag team in. Why is the resonance chamber important at the beginning? We know it's important, but why? If only everything could be like this.
Whoops. They say that the resonance chamber is going to help me figure stuff out, I think. Like learn about my past, blah, blah, blah.
Basically the situation is I've got a lot of questions about who I am. And I'm asking them the questions, and they're saying, hey, we don't have the answers, but the key to this mystery is the resonance chamber. So cool. We then go on a really long goose chase to find out who can repair this resonance chamber. We meet some folks on the way. Eventually, we are pointed in the direction of a sanctuary. We have to go through an ancient tomb, like catacombs, to get to the sanctuary.
Hold on. Wait, there's an important part.
There is an important that I am leaving out. So as we are leaving our unconscious mind after we land, a being called Only the Sorrow infiltrates our unconsciousness and begins attacking our unconsciousness. We're barely able to escape it, and we are like informed, oh, this thing is called the Sorrow, and it's after all of the cast-outs, right? Yeah.
And that unconsciousness is called the Labyrinth. And we do know who's going to repair the resonance chamber for us. It's a guy named Mazoff.
Yes.
We, in part of our goose chase, go into a Mirrorcaster, which is like a memory device, and we meet Mazoff.
And we find out that we are unique. Like, our unique power among the cast-offs is we can change the past when we use the Mirrorcaster, which is not typical.
This power does not matter at all.
No, there's a revelation that this exists. Which it seems like, oh man, this is the crux of it. But
yes, but does not fundamentally matter. But we meet Mazoff in there, so he knows who we are. And the only reason I say that is that he comes up again toward the end of the game. But
yeah.
We end up in Miola Vest, the sanctuary of the cast-offs. Go ahead.
We talk to a couple people. We do the Mirrorcaster thing again to go back into other people's minds to try to figure out some secrets. But oh no, the Sorrow comes back. The Sorrow's there. The sorrow wrecks everybody. We run away from the sorrow, and then we have to jump through a portal, and we pop out in some strange place called the Bloom, which is basically it's a giant, incredibly powerful organism that is psychic and mysterious. And there's a whole little like society living in the Bloom. And last episode we dealt with the kind of the first steps of attempting to find we're basically at this point searching for the changing god. We're trying to get a face-to-face here, but we keep running into all of these fetch quests, and where we ended last episode was we found this political leader called the Memovira, and the Memovira tasked us with finding an individual that was important to the Memovira, but we know that that individual was somehow consumed by the Bloom, and we would have to go to the heart of the Bloom to free this individual, which seems like a really tough ask because the Bloom is this, I don't know, gargantuan entity with near limitless intelligence and power.
Yeah, and it's like unknowable. It's like you're inside of Cthulhu, basically.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like you're so insignificant, Cthulhu doesn't care. You're just like the same way us human beings have, bacteria floating around in our stomach. Cthulhu's fine with that,
It loves it.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing all that work. It's just like gut flora.
Yeah, probiotics.
Helping to eat bananas or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that person's name is Ishin, and the Memovira says, listen, I know that you're looking for the first, okay, because the first is the first cast-off. The first cast-off and the Changing God have been in like an eternal battle, literally called the Endless War, not the Blood War. It's different for some reason. They've been locked in this battle for forever, and I guess we want to ally with the first or talk to the first. This is very unclear to me.
Yeah, so it's kind of like this is the background, and it's kind of up to the player to choose how they approach this political battle. But yeah, it is very much a God casting Lucifer down type situation. The Changing God, the very first incarnation, like the first cast off, has been leading a rebellion against the Changing God, and desires to basically stop the Changing God doing what they're doing, and to like give freedom to all of the cast-offs, like sever the Changing God from the collective memories and existence of the rest of the cast-offs, so the cast-offs can like lead their own little lives. Whereas the Changing God, we don't know much. I feel like I ultimately figured out all of the motivations of the Changing God here at the end, but I think there were hints before that the Changing God wants to call back all of the cast-offs and subsume them and like rob them of their bodies.
Yeah, because when we meet the Changing God a couple episodes ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're in the labyrinth and we meet the Changing God. It just tells us this straight up.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, there's no evidence of this of this motivation. And in fact, I think that a lot of the motivations that are revealed in this last hour or so of the game might be hinted at, but well, we'll talk about it when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some like, I don't know, some real patchwork storytelling going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
But yeah, that leads us up until the present. The present is we are on a fetch quest, right? Like this is we need to go find this guy to get past the next plot bottleneck, which is the Memovira is like, oh, I'll help you, but you need to find this person first. And here we are. We're here in a big old gut.
Yeah. So I cannot tell you how I started looking for Ishin. I think eventually I just so I went immediately to the Gygaxian and I said, "Hey, do you know where Ishin is?" Mm-hmm. And the Gygaxian did not help me out at all. So I just started going everywhere that I had not been yet and talking about it. Eventually, I ended up in the big like it's a temple or something. I don't know. It's in that big head.
Yeah, that's where I went. Is I talked to one of the merchants, and the merchants were like, "Hey, how about that temple over there?" I walked in and talked to someone, and gee whiz, it was easy because that person just like, "Oh, well, there's a portal right there on the wall,
right over there." Yeah, I do think that temple's pretty cool because it's a temple dedicated or in service to the first person who was in the Mimavira's position, basically. The first person to, like, make an alliance with the Bloom. I thought that was cool. A little bit of storytelling. But, so there's a maw there, and you have to feed a predator into it. So how'd you do that?
I said, "Hey, Matt Kina, get going."
Well, so this is interesting. I also fed a party member into it. What did that conversation look like with Matt Kina?
I had to do some convincing. I said, "Matt Kina, get over there." Matt Kina was like, "That seems like bad. That's bad. This thing is powerful and bad." And I said, "Oh, are you chicken?" Bark, 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 bark. And Matt Kina was like, "Oh boy!" And I did the same thing I did with Alagurn when I needed through that portal to the Starship Enterprise. Basically, I told Matt Kina was like, "Oh, I need some help here," and I was like, "Let it go, let it feed a little bit more," and eventually it opened, and Matt Kina was not happy.
So you've got 3 party members, and you've really pissed 2 of them off, right?
Correct. Yeah. Tiber, though, we're tight
because he hasn't been fed to one yet.
No.
I had I'm just gonna keep saying Callistiga for for continuity purposes.
I mean, has the YouTube corrected us? That's the real question. No. God, the shame on the Rangers around the world. For not knowing the canonical pronunciation of that character.
But, she's kind of like surrounded by her sisters. She broke herself in, like, time and space, and so there are all these echoes of her in different realities that are swarming around her. And so I said, "Look, you should just go jump in that thing. We need to get through it." And she said, "Well, why would I do that?" And I was like, "Aren't you interested in what could happen?" And she said, "Yeah, I am. Gosh, you know me so well. I am."
It truly is Hellraiser. I want to experience all the pleasure and the pain.
It's indistinguishable.
Phenomena.
So she goes up, and the writing is pretty cool because basically what happens is the maw tentacles are kind of flowing through her, and they're spectral and all that kind of stuff. And they grab one of her alternate reality versions of herself. And they, like, consume that one, and it, like, rips it away from her body and all that kind of stuff. So in a probable universe, one of those tentacles just murdered her.
How does she feel about that?
She was like, it was painful, I think, but she wasn't mad at the end of the thing. She wasn't like, "Why'd you make me do that?" She was like, "Oh, I learned a lot." So it's pretty cool. So that takes you to the gullet. This is the most, I think, the most Baldur's Gate-y kind of dungeon in the game.
That is accurate. There is a Gygaxian kind of environmental storytelling going on in this area. Unlike, I think the closest Baldur's Gate was actually the Psychic Inn, or the Psychic Bar.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that one and this. There is a fight that you can avoid, and you can, like, basically pull a lever to shift the fight somewhere else, right? And there are a couple of distinct rooms with their own little themes and their own little secrets, and you got to do things around the map to kind of prime the exit, which is in the center.
Yes. Yeah, so the first one, there's like a fight going on because everyone who gets fed to a maw ends up in the gullet, basically. If the bloom eats you. And so these are people who are, like, being, like, existentially and ontologically dissolved and consumed.
They're being digested.
Yeah, but it's not like...
It's not physical digestion. It is a Metaphysical digestion.
Yeah, and so like the guy you talk to talks about how some people just fade out. Some people like literally get absorbed. Some people they're like possessed by illusions and things like that. And
Some people just raise hell.
Yeah, some people just kick each other's ass because people here cannot die.
Mm-hmm.
The bloom doesn't let you go. So yes, there are a bunch of people like Dante's Inferno style, just fighting each other, beating each other up for eternity. And I fused with some tendrils and gave them some memories, and they made them all go away.
Mm-hmm.
There's a room with a robot.
Yeah.
Artaglio was in that room with a robot.
Yeah, I saw him. I made him. That was the guy that I made. That I made travel and open a portal for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to him, and now he's chilling out in the labyrinth.
Yeah, I was like, hey man, if you don't like living here, you can just live in my brain forever. And he said, yeah, sure, cool. Yeah, that sounds good.
Way better than gullet living, I guess.
I think so. Leaving that in.
There's also a place where you can rest. You can just like slide into a big old globule.
I saw that on the map, and I don't think I used it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's basically, all that said, there's a big whirlpool in the center of the map. And if you, like, there's a big robot that's being absorbed, and I searched through that robot and got 2 different, like, spray cans. Like Quickcrete. Or whatever. Some spray silicone. And so there are like all this liquid that's flowing out of the bloom into the whirlpool, and I sealed up one outlet, and I sealed up another, or blew up the other outlet. And then there was like a big tube that was whipping around, and I grabbed it with my nimble fingers and I tied it off.
Now, did you find the rope to be able to get down softly, or did you just jump down?
I just jumped down.
So did I, but I'm pretty sure that there's a way to like find rope, but I think you have to fight the spirits that you can teleport around in order to get the rope.
That would be helpful due to what occurs immediately after this.
Oh, what occurs immediately after this?
So the water level goes down. You're able to go into this hole. When you jump down into this hole, you are in like the foyer?
Yeah.
The vestibule of the heart of the bloom.
The chamber.
So you get in there, and it's a crisis.
Crisis time.
Time for a crisis.
You
But we
fools.
had vastly different experiences with this crisis.
Yes.
What happened for you?
So, this is... there's a phrase I draw that actually... this is a quote from you the first time I saw you fighting Ornstein and Smo. Which is, this is the nadir of gaming. This is the lowest point.
I thought you were going to say, this can't kill me because I'm already dead.
This can't kill me. Or this is Sando. He is my savior. No, none of the hot takes. No, this is the nadir of gaming, because this is so the crisis happens, and there are basically between you and your objective, there is kind of 2 walls, and those walls can be bypassed via these little gates, and in order to open the gates, you have to kind of interact with them and do something. And for me, the only way I really figured out how to do something was through combat, like through bashing. There are also 2 tentacles on like the antechambers on the far sides of the chamber that you can interact with. And if you do that, I guess you can like control, you can try to mind meld and control of these doors, which are kind of biological in nature. They're kind of like valves almost of a heart, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So anyway, I immediately say I don't like combat in this game. It gives me, it gives me a lot of indigestion. So I immediately say I'm just going to brute force try to get to the end point with a character as quickly as possible. And I do happen to send someone over to the tentacles, but it's not the last cast off, so they can't like do anything over there. And I bash through the doors. All the meantime, there are little beings like attacking me. That is the defense mechanism of the bloom. And I bash through the doors, and then I kill those beings, but then that causes 3 more beings to spawn. And then by the time I get to the actual entrance to the heart, which is characterized as a sphincter, which never before has a game more aptly labeled a bottleneck or obstacle, none of my characters have enough stat pool to like do the thing, which is kind of the nature of this game, right? It's like, okay, you rest and you can do X amount of things on a probabilistic level, not even on a determined, because like there was like several times on the doors I had like a 70% chance to open it, and like on 2 occasions with my 70% chance it was like, no, sorry, which is the most feel bad thing I've experienced in a game easily.
If you were DMing this session, you just give it to him.
I think that the whole idea
you'd fudge the dice roll here.
I think the whole idea is you really don't want to even be in a position, and maybe this is like a topic for helpful homunculi, you don't want to be in a position in a tabletop game where this is a possibility, right? Where like something that anticlimactic. I can understand leaving it to fate when it comes to like pushing, like having a battle of wills with the heart of the bloom, right? But this is a door. And like the idea of, I don't know. I just, like, playing this made me realize how the idea of failure is just, you don't open the door. It doesn't progress. It's not yes and. It's just, okay, well, you don't open the door. That action economy is gone. Like, that is my least favorite part of games now, I think. That's one of the reasons why I've been, skewing towards more narrative-driven games. Because I just really don't like the idea of presenting the players with these options where it's either, oh, you succeed and we get to continue with the story and experience stuff. Oh, you fail. Oh, nothing happens. Nothing happens.
I'm just dying in a pit forever.
Yeah, nothing happens. I'm just going to, maybe in another 5 minutes you'll get to experience the story. Won't that be fun? Yeah, but this is... So, I had to reload, and when I reloaded, it was a normal combat encounter, and there were just, like, 3 guys, and I tried one more time of just running to the thing to activate it, but the enemies are strong enough to, like, 3-shot my party, and they have AoE attacks. So, I have to bottleneck them and, like, do a very tedious tactical game of killing them, and that takes like 15 minutes. And then after I kill them, there are no further respawns. Oh, by the way, here's the best part about this thing. At the end of every initiative order, the bloom will just hobble all of your party members, causing their speed to be reduced by half.
Yeah, it literally just like earthquakes and knocks everybody down.
Yeah.
That is the worst part of the whole thing.
It's truly like insult to injury. Like, I know that you want to like do this combat encounter, but let me just like basically affect you with a status modifier that with a fettle, which reduces. Yeah, I'm talking about fettles, which reduce your movement speed by half. That's great. That's fun.
How much money would we have to raise for charity for you to get a tattoo that just says fettle, like on your leg?
$10,000.
10,000? You would do it for 10 grand?
Absolutely.
If we raise $10,000, you will get the word fettle, F-E-T-T-L-E, tattooed on your leg.
Yeah, I'll get it in whatever font y'all choose, too.
Oh, wow.
There'd be a pole at the end of the charity.
That's amazing. Okay, well, so I had a little bit different of a thing. And I, like I said, I didn't find the rope, and so I imagine maybe if you find the rope, then the combat or the crisis doesn't start, I guess, as soon as you hit the ground. One might assume. I don't know. But so I got down there, and to my benefit, earlier in the game, when I was in the Bloom, I mentioned this a couple episodes ago, I found a big tumor, and the tumor would, like, absorb my emotions. So I just kept clicking on it and giving it and thinking bad thoughts or whatever. And eventually an abacos, which we saw in the Fifth Eye Tavern, it popped out. And it jumped off the edge of where I was standing and disappeared.
Okay.
Lo and behold, that thing is down here now.
Well, darn.
So when the crisis starts, it's fighting the Bloom's baddos. Okay? So I take my party and I shoot to the left side of the screen, and
I'm glad that worked out. There is some weird stuff in the AI of this game, which we're going to touch on later, regarding AI, like the AI of the enemies and how strongly they ignore or engage your party when there are other options.
Yeah, it all worked out. Importantly, when I got to the very end of it, I didn't have to do any skill checks like you're talking about. I used the transdimensional scalpel and just cut it open.
It all pays off. The old transdimensional scalpel.
Yeah, that thing is broken. It also allows you to kill people in the gullet. So they don't come back. But yeah.
Handy.
So what'd you see when you got through the other side?
There's the Heart of the Bloom, and it's just a bunch of tendrils, and...
Oh, wait. Hold on. Guess what?
Wait, what?
It's time for the Elminster Minute.
What?
So yeah, I was thinking about Elminster recently. You know, we've been playing this game that I haven't enjoyed playing. I've been thinking about the good old days, you know. I've been looking forward to getting into Icewind Dale and, you know, just enjoying the stuff that I do in the past. So I was looking up some Elminster quotes. There's one where he says, you know, not even the gods took unto themselves the power to control ye or me so tightly that we cannot walk or speak or breathe save at another's bidding. It is their will that we may be free to do so as we may. Slay a foe, sure, or defend thyself against a raider, but to strike down one who may someday menace thee, that is as monstrous as the act of the usurper who slays all babies in a land for fear of a rightful heir someday rising against him. Isn't that interesting?
Damn, that's biblical.
Well, it's Elminstery.
was Elminster just
anyway? That's the Elminster Minute.
All right. Well, I am. That came out of nowhere. I was going to say no. I just went up to a big mass of tendrils and gave myself unto the bloom to figure this out.
What'd you learn?
Well, basically, in order to, like, I wanted to, like, pull a tendril off, but it was incredibly difficult, even with, like, 10 might to do that. I had, like, a 15% chance of success. So I just let the tendrils drain my intelligence, and I got some flashbacks from previous lives of the Changing God and maybe the first cast off and things, and I think I may have learned some stuff about the Changing God. What did you learn?
I'm looking at my thing here. So remember all the way back when we got those various different visions
at the Sage's Cliffs, right?
Exactly. I learned that those are not all like different people, or those are not just like images and ideas. Those are memories of different versions of the Changing God. And so I learned that the first is one of the people that helped build Miela Vest. It was basically built with between the Changing God and the first, and that's kind of it.
That's what you learned. Yeah. No, that there was a woman who's identified as the first that was helping the Changing God, and I gave up those little morsels, and then the tentacles spat out none other than the person we've been looking for this whole time.
Ishan.
A.K.A. Mazov.
Yeah, this is just Mazov. And I don't know why they didn't just say that to begin with. I don't understand the point of calling him something else. But yeah, and so he says, oh, dang, y'all. I've been working for the first, but importantly, the Mimavira is the first.
Yes.
That's the other thing we learn, I guess.
That's how we learned that from Mazov. Mazov's like, yeah, that person, it's the first. Oh, man, I'm going to go through this portal now. Bye.
Yeah, he zips out. Is that a surprise? That the Mimavira is the first?
I think it's supposed to be. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't like, oh, man, they were right there. I was talking to them.
Yeah, me neither. Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you do the Mirrorcaster thing that he drops?
He dropped it. I immediately went through the portal.
Okay, so it's actually pretty interesting. It's an interesting like gameplay section. Basically, it's one of those like first-person choose-your-own-adventure things. But it's about the fact that in the Endless Battle, the First's army is still fighting the Changing Gods. Right?
Sure.
The way that battle works is that they both have these big reality-altering war machines, right? And it's the same war machine that was used against the people who were invading Sage's Cliffs that we learned all the way back in, like, episode 2.
The folks represented, or that the genocide represents.
Exactly. So it's the same weaponry. And anyway, so the idea is, like, you're one of these people that was, that got out of Miela Vest, and you're on an undercover mission. You, like, go through this dungeon. It's a straight up, like, you have a map, and you can go north, east, west, south, all this kind of stuff. You navigate it, and when you get to the end of the dungeon where you're going to sabotage the other reality-altering machine, it's not there. And you find out, oh, dang, the Changing God knew I was going to get here, and so altered reality and reversed time back to before they destroyed... Oh, I guess I should say, the reason you're doing this is because he has destroyed your reality-altering machine. And so he reverses time to before that even occurred in order to make sure that you never get to his reality-altering machine. So it resets to 0. It's some fun, like, fantasy storytelling or sci-fi storytelling. And I think it must power people up for, like, the big fight that happens toward the end. But... ultimately, you could skip it.
Gotcha.
You went through the portal.
Yes, I went through the portal, and then I immediately went to the guard at the Mimavira's camp. And guard's like, hey, are you ready? If you go here, you're probably not coming back. And it's very, like, obvious game language. Hey, we're getting to the end here. If you want to do other things, don't do this. But I was like, yes, let's do it. Went in there. Mimavira immediately is like, aha, I'm actually the first. I'm the first cast off. Were we saying earlier that the Mimavira was the Changing God? That's wrong.
No, I said she was the first.
Yeah, I may have misspoke, but yeah, so the Mimavira is the first cast off, lost for these hundreds of years, supposedly, and the first cast off reveals her plan, which is we are going to get rid of the Changing God and basically sever this continuous link like we were talking about at the beginning of the episode so that all of the cast-offs can gain independence and, like, move on with their lives. And the first cast-off believes that this act, which would require manipulating the resonance chamber, that this act would stop the Sorrow's interests, right? The Sorrow would no longer be interested in pursuing all of these cast-offs, right?
Yeah, and I think I understood the pitch to be blowing up the tides, right? Which we established, the tides are like interstellar Wi-Fi.
Sure. The tides are... It's almost like imagining if the alignment in Planescape and Dungeons and Dragons were an energy force that had, instead of like having manifestations like, oh, there's an Archon, or oh, there's like a little clockwork being that represents axiomatic alignment. Like they were more like an energy flow in some way. I don't know. That's how I've interpreted it based on the way tides work in terms of your own character's development. Indigo tide, gold tide, etc.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Yeah, where'd you lose me?
You can just keep talking from wherever you stopped.
Yeah. No, I understood the tides to be more like kind of this weird energy flow that's kind of an amalgamation of alignment and other stuff.
Yeah, but it's all part of... It's like all on the back of a network. Because we've talked about that before. Like, we got info, like a big info dump earlier about it. So, like, it is about alignment and stuff like that, but the tides are also, like, an actual interconnection of information and materials and things like that.
It might be like the Force.
It is like the Force. Exactly. But
yeah.
But a little bit more techno than mystical.
So anyway, I tell the first cast off, absolutely, let's do it.
You know what? Very funny. I did the same thing.
Yeah, it seems like that is the best thing to do. The Changing God has repeatedly attempted to kill me.
Yeah. And that will kill you.
Sure, I'm fine with it.
You know, so I think this is like a big problem in the game, is immediately after all that stuff you have to do in the Bloom and the Heart of the Bloom, I felt so incredibly nihilistic about both my character and their actions in the world that I was like, yeah, sure, just let me die. Let it be over.
Yeah, this whole thing, I was very much in a extinguish the flame mode, a la Dark Souls, right? So this starts a crisis where the sorrow begins to invade, and the objective is to keep away, you know, to like stave off the sorrow long enough, right?
Yeah, because the first brings in the resonance chamber. It is literally spinning around and charging up its laser.
Yeah,
it's spirit bombing all over this shit.
The first time I do this, I like go to try to be a part of the fight, and the last cast off dies. So the second time I do this, I literally don't move any of my characters and just hit end turn every time, and I get through the encounter.
Same. I bundled them up toward the top of the stairs, but I did the same thing.
I'm doing a chef's kiss right now. Wonderful. Great encounter. Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing at all. I feel like Until Dawn continues to teach me lessons.
I mean, that's the thing, is you haven't learned the lesson yet. And you're requiring new experiences to do it. So we do that. The sorrow explodes or whatever. The chamber blows up. Everyone gets shunted off into the labyrinth in your head. This is where we learn what this whole game was about.
Yeah.
Do you remember the ghostly woman?
It turns out this is a very on-brand game. Because what this game is about is a bad, sad dad. It's just straight up, this is another game about a murder dad.
Yeah. You know what? It really is. We really came around to it in the end, didn't we?
It took this long. But we are incapable of choosing a game that is not about a murder dad.
You know, people often talked about, a few years ago, the dadification of games. But really, it is the murder dadification of games.
Truly. Yeah, the ghostly woman, it just turns out that the reason why this whole thing started is that the Changing God lost his daughter. His daughter was put into a coma or some kind of, stasis state ward off disaster, and the Changing God was like doing all this research to try to bring her back. Is that more or less it?
So earlier in the game, we learned about the man who defended Sage's Cliffs from the Tabat, which is the genocide, and all of those people. And he created these big world-altering machines, reality-altering machines. And when that happened in the game, we thought, oh, that must have been the Changing God. Which is true, but it was the Changing God before he was the Changing God.
Mm-hmm.
That's the important thing to me, is that it's just he's some guy.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a period of time where he was some guy with the first cast off, just working in concert with this weird reincarnated clone type figure.
Yeah, but that was after this. It's after his daughter gets hurt in the siege. Yeah,
yes.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he makes her and basically is like, you're just a clone, you don't matter. As soon as I can figure out how to bring my daughter back using this technology, I'm going to reabsorb you, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And he becomes a baddo.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lot like, what's that creature's name in the bottom of Irenicus's dungeon, who's so sad? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Not the wood nymphs, right?
Yeah, well, it's not the wood nymphs, but the other guy, the guy in the thing. He has Cespinar's voice, but he's not. Anyway, similar to that guy, the fish thing, who used to be his dog.
Yeah.
So
we meet this ghost, this person, after a puzzle sequence.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and and you can heal there, and you can go to the next room, and in the next room, there are 2 more Choose Your Own Adventure sections where you relive vital moments of the Changing God's origin story. One is when the sorrow basically came after the Changing God kind of the first time, and the Changing God had to abandon the stasis chamber of his daughter in order to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is a time when the Changing God was also running away from the Changing God and had to like get into an escape pod.
It is the moment right before the game begins.
Yes, there we go. This is the moment before the Changing God
casts you off.
Severs this aspect of you. Mm-hmm. As like basically in the same way that a lizard, when attempting to running away, will sometimes detach its tail.
Yeah.
Is kind of the implication I got. You were just a diversion, or our existence is just a diversion.
But crucially, this is the big deal to me here. And by the by, due to some weird visual glitch that I got, about half my screen was obscured this entire time by a tutorial tooltip pop-up. So I only got part of the story. But in that second one, we are given the information that you are cast off, but the Changing God's brain or mind does not transfer into the new clone. Mm-hmm. Right?
I guess.
The Changing God is dead. Statement. At this point in the game, it is revealed to us that the Changing God, as a figure who is running around in the world, does not exist. There is no Changing God right now.
Yeah. So there is a Changing God in that there is the idea of the Changing God that continues to exist and exert pressure on the labyrinth. Right?
Which is just in your head.
Which is in my head. But also, the Changing God took over a cultist in the Crystal Caverns.
But with using like a brain transmitter thing.
Sure.
So my assumption is that had to have been the Changing God in your brain.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the biggest loophole I find in the explanation. But yes,
and
that basically, that basically the Changing God as a dude running around is gone,
died.
Mm-hmm.
And the Changing God that is living in your brain
Doesn't know that.
A, does not know that. And B, believes it is the Changing God because it is an AI backup assistant. It is Alexa, the Changing God.
Which we meet the assistant in the second vision. Or in the first vision, rather, right?
In both visions.
Yeah, in both visions. You can talk to it in one of them and kind of... So in one of them, it was interesting. I asked, is there a teleporter backup? And I told the assistant, turn off the teleporter backup. I'm not leaving here without my daughter. And the assistant says, that's ridiculous. And I said, do it. And the assistant says, okay, I don't like it. And then I just read in the Crystal Encyclopedia some entries to get some backstory on the tides and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And then the sorrow bursts through, and and I say, hey, take me, just don't hurt my daughter. And then the assistant zaps me out and says, I'm sorry, I'm going to disobey your orders, but I've got to do this because if you die, I die. And this may pay off later, but we'll see.
Well, this is the end of the game. I don't. So there's a conversation that happens between.
No, I'm saying it pays off in the next scene, but I don't want to say that now.
I'm trying to think of what ends this scene though, right? So
so basically you go to those two things, and then after you activate those two things, you can. There's a cutscene where the entity of the Changing God in the labyrinth, everything we've been talking about the last 15 minutes has been happening in our mind, right?
Yeah.
The Changing God appears, the last cast-off appears. I think there may have been a scene before this where it was the Changing God and the last cast-off in an endless argument. Did that happen before this?
Sure.
Yeah. They appear, and I can talk with the Changing God, and I can tell the Changing God various things. I could surrender and say, hey, no, you're right. You should totally do this.
That is right. Yeah, you can basically take a side.
Yeah.
I backed up the first and said, you're right. And she said, why'd you do that? And I said, because you're correct.
Mm-hmm. So then there's, after that is the two-door situation. And then this is the final confrontation with the Changing God. And I chose 5 dialogue options to attempt to convince the Changing God that they were not real. None of them worked, and the Changing God eventually said, you're just stalling, and then we fought.
Dang.
What happened with you?
It worked for me. I said, you're not real, and I guess had exhausted every dialogue option for every conversation because I had 6 pieces of evidence to prove it. And I just clicked on all of them and presented all of them. And the Changing God said, you know what? You're right, I'm not real. And then dissipated.
That did not happen for me.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, I clicked on 5, and eventually the Changing God said, you're just stalling. And then a crisis happens. The Changing God rearranges the room so that there is a big gulf between myself and the first cast-off and the Changing God. And the Changing God starts summoning monsters on one side of the room. The Changing God's daughter comes to me in a vision and says, hey, remember how I helped you out in that puzzle? I've given you the power to do that too. So now I can adjust the floors on the ground. So I create a pathway to the Changing God, and then I delete the pathway behind me so that none of the monsters that the Changing God is summoning can get to me. And then over the course of 5 rounds, myself and the first cast-off kill the Changing God. Or rather, kill the Changing God's apparition that appears in the Mind Palace, which is the Labyrinth.
That seems like a much less interesting end of the game than I had.
Mm-hmm. And then we confront the Sorrow.
Yeah, so it's oh, you think that's the end of the game? It's not the end of the game.
No, now we got to confront the real big bad. Then the Sorrow's there, and the Sorrow's like, hey, you're pretty diligent. I'll actually talk to you. I know I've been just wrecking shit. But
I know I could have done this 14 hours ago.
But I respect you. Your travails and you defeating the murder dad means that I respect you, and I'll hear you out. And the Sorrow basically lays out that the Changing God and all of these cast-offs have been an abuse of the tides, that they've really been wrecking havoc with the universe and causing all this suffering because the Force, is out of balance or what have you.
Yeah, simply by existing, they are, like, messing everything up. Which, to be fair, is definitely true.
Yeah, and the Sorrow explicitly points out, the Endless War is 100% the Changing God. Like, this individual's choice to make reincarnated clones.
But even, I'm, like, running around through this whole game, and anytime anyone pisses me off, I unleash the tides on them and, like, warp their brain or make
or
them
send them to their
are.
doom in the bloom.
Exactly. So it's just like, okay, it's fair.
Fair, 100% true. And I mean, basically what happens is I'm in a position where I can make a choice, and the Sorrow says, hey, you can make your choice, but there are going to be consequences depending on what you do. And the Sorrow tells me, oh, well, the first cast-off, if you do what the first cast-off wanted you to do, like, yeah, you could do that, but I'm still going to hunt you all down because you're incredibly damaging to the world. Like, your control over the tides is bad, so I'm still going to go after you. And eventually, I don't know how I ended up on this option, but eventually I was like, well, what if all of our consciousness gets zapped into the Changing God's daughter's mind?
Yeah, because you can basically make the claim, or compressing all the cast-offs into one person stops, like, the stretchy effect of the being the Changing God or part of the Changing God. So if everyone who has this type of tide warping power is one person, that one person cannot use the power. That's kind of like the bid. And there's like a bunch of versions of that. You can absorb everybody. The First can absorb everybody. The Changing God's daughter, XYZ.
I went with the Changing God's daughter instead of me or the First because Changing God's daughter hasn't had... Basically, when she went into her coma or into that stasis chamber, the world was not fucked up in the way it is now, right? Like there's been irreparable harm to the universe, and both myself and the first cast-off have been a part of that harm. So I thought it was more prudent to give agency to this person that was not a part of the problem.
I mean, that seems fair.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be critical of that. I put it into the First. And she was like, why do you do that? Why do you believe in me? And I said, I don't know if I believe in you necessarily, but I believe that a lot of this is your fault, and now it's your responsibility. And so their dialogue options allow you to kind of be like, this is your curse now, bro. So, yeah.
And then credits roll, and probably one of my favorite parts of the game is in the credits, all of the little side quests. I have a little credit sequence where it describes like how things end.
Yeah, I did not finish any of my party members' side quests, and let me tell you, they're all depressing.
Yeah, I think that Rin is like, one day she got to be 30, and she was like, shit, I don't even remember the last time I tried to figure out how to get home.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bad. It's messed up.
Yeah.
That one I had Eurytus, who's, he's the guy who's possessed by two demons. I never figured out how to get those demons out of him. And so they just ate him alive, and he perished like in a hole somewhere.
Tiber did not have a credit sequence, which I assume he just got off scot-free for all of his criminal, he's just like still a criminal somewhere. So that's fine.
That's all right.
Allegorn spent his last moments as his he died with his tattoo screaming.
Yeah, I got his ending too. Since I guess he's technically a recruitable party member, I don't actually know why I got his ending.
Of course, all of the cast off characters, like Matt Kina doesn't get an ending because Matt Kina does not exist.
Yeah, she got absorbed.
So you got absorbed.
Yeah, the first like went off and did what she was supposed to do, and occasionally did bad, but mostly did good. The end. What did the daughter do?
The exact same thing. It was kind of a the tales of her good deeds and evil deeds are still the envy of all heroes and villains.
Cool.
It's like the last line. I got to admit, would have loved to to experience this as a choose your own adventure book.
Yeah,
like a paperback Goosebump style choose your own adventure book. I would have been very pleased with. Could have lit a couple candles. Could have got my headlamp. Could have tucked myself into my bed. Could have had all the lights off and just kind of read Torment: Tides of Numenera, and I think I would have been pretty happy with that.
I mean, I think this game would be perfectly awesome as just as those like interstitial visual novel-y kind of parts.
Yeah, as the mirrors.
Yeah, just do the whole thing. 10 hours of that. It'd be good.
Yeah.
I'd
just
play it.
and you could like spend all of the budget on the immense amount of visual art, which God knows how many human hours were lost, how many children were like not seen to see these like the little veins in the inside of the bloom so you could see them twitch. Imagine just like paying artists to like illustrate all of the little parts of the visual novel aspects.
Yeah, it'd be good. I mean, I think that the story of this, although I don't know about like how it wraps itself up, I'm not necessarily hype about that. But like in the broadest strokes, this is a good story in a cool setting.
I think the setting is cool. I think the story, which I think we talked about this before, I would have liked a little bit more, just a tiny bit tighter focus. I think that the story would have done well. Like there's this whole half of the game where I'm just trying to get to the story, and I think the story's big enough that the whole game could have been dedicated to it, right? But the problem was that it set itself in the footsteps of Planescape, which was at its core like a mystery. And I think that this game, I don't know if mystery is the correct genre in terms of the way to experience this game.
Yeah, it is playing in the shadow of Planescape Torment, because what can change the nature of a man animates the entire back half of that game. And there is not a phrase, even though at the end they do try to make a phrase, and now I can't even think of what it is. But that does not have the same... I don't care about the Changing God in the same way that I care about like what's going on with the Nameless One and his history.
Sure. I think that that's the thing, is like you had this Memento situation with Planescape. I think that the way I envision Torment: Tides of Numenera is this is a very similar to like Siege of Dragons. This is way closer to Siege of Dragonspear than Planescape Torment, right?
Yeah.
This is about a grand political struggle and about the fate of the universe and like two factions like facing off against each other, and your role in that to like determine how it all ends up. That felt bigger to me, and it tried to be like, oh, but you're very important. But as you just said, like the thing that's really important about you, the fact that you can change time, like the past with Mirrorcasters, is mentioned once and then immediately forgotten.
Yeah, and I didn't say this earlier, but I think the reason for that in the end is that is the Changing God's power, and so that should signal to us that there is not another actual Changing God. It's just us, because we still have that power.
Yeah.
But that only makes sense at the very end, and doesn't... Like, I don't know when you would have solved that at some point, right?
No, that's the thing, is I think that in order for fiction to work in terms of, like, a mystery, you gotta solve it before the end credits, right? Like like the revelation has to come before the end of the experience, right?
I don't know how in just randomly playing the game, and maybe if I had, maxed out every side quest, I would have a better sense of it. But I don't know how I could have solved that on my own. And that's like a good mystery, right? A good mystery, you can, as a viewer or experiencer, you can always be one step ahead of the thing you're watching. Right? This is why I find, like, a traditional mystery is much more compelling, in my opinion, than something like Westworld, which continually just changes the rules of the game.
Sure.
In order to animate its mystery and keep it pushing down the line. A good mystery is you have a bunch of pieces in front of you, and you can make very smart, educated guesses about what's going to happen. And sometimes you're right because all the pieces were there.
But what it gives you is the ability to appreciate it after it comes in, and be like, "Oh, I saw these individual puzzle pieces, and now they fit together."
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like what Westworld trades on entirely, right? Is like,
sure.
Oh, it's all retrojective. But for me, that's only half of the kind of play of the thing.
Oh, well, I think the difference is in the Westworld example you're using, you'll see a piece, but you're like, oh, but that wasn't a whole piece. That this is actually like a different object altogether. So that's why the mystery has this completely different composition. I think that what we both want is something where we can see these individual clues, and we can either, guess correctly and interpret them, or if not, see how they fit together as a whole, given the clues, instead of, oh, there's all this outside information you were never privy to. In any case, I think it's just it didn't really land with me. I think that it's way cooler. Hey, let me tell you this: I am glad we did this episode, and I'm glad we did this series as a podcast. And one of the reasons I am glad is I think that listening to us talk about this might be cooler than the game.
I definitely would not have made it all the way through this game again.
I think that if you were to experience this game one way and you have listened to this podcast, I think you're good.
Yeah, I don't think you need to go and do this on your own. I think you could, if you really want it, go watch someone who's Let's Playing the whole thing.
Sure.
So you can fast forward through the parts you don't care about. Or
But
watch
yeah.
a streamer.
God, how many? Let's go to Twitch right now.
And if you, if you don't like that, you don't think that's good, buy the game, and then go watch someone stream it. Give the developers their money. That's fair. Yeah, how many people are streaming this?
Torment's Tides. Let's see. Torment's Tides of Numenera. There are no channels found. Let's look at videos. The last video, this was a casual playthrough. It has 2 views. It was 4 days ago. And it looks like, yeah, there are 6 videos on Twitch featuring this game. 5 of them have 0 views.
Well, the next game we're doing is Icewind Dale. We're much more excited about that. We're going to take a break. We're going to take probably a month break. Not a full month, but we'll skip a episode.
Yeah, we'll skip a episode. I think we decided we're not going to do the typical wrap-up episode because we've editorialized fairly regularly during this playthrough about kind of our opinions about the storyline and our general impressions.
Correct. So yeah, we'll skip one episode, but we're skipping one episode for you so we can get ahead one episode on our end.
Perfect.
And I don't think Icewind Dale it'll probably be 10 episodes or something like that. This was episode 60. If you like the show, you can support us on Patreon. You can look at the link in the description below. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's a podcast version of Mages and Murderdads that you can find. If you're listening to this on the podcast version, go to the video and just click the thumbs up button at youtube.com/rangetouch. That would help us out a lot. Hit subscribe if you haven't hit subscribe already. If you're at the end of episode 60 of the show, think about subscribing. Why don't you? Be beneficial. And if you have already subscribed, hit that thumbs up button, hit the like, and maybe share this on Twitter or Facebook or something like that. We don't pay any money for advertising, so it would be great, if you would spread it around via word of mouth. You can listen to our monthly show that me and Michael Lutz do that's supported by the Range Touch Network. It's called Game Studies Study Buddies. We read game studies texts and talk about them for incredibly long amounts of time. Our next book up after this episode comes out will be Alexander Galloway's Gaming, Essays in Algorithmic Culture. You might enjoy that. And, of course, the normal Range Touch crew, me and Danny, have a Helpful Homunculi, which is a show that is about running tabletop games. We're going to have the 3rd episode of that coming out toward the end of this month. If you want to hear us talk even more, you can go to our Patreon. You can support it for $5 a month. That'll get you an extra podcast where we just talk about whatever.
Newsletter and other fun stuff. Have we announced the new tier that we're planning?
No, we need to talk about that off air.
Okay. So tune in for that.
Tune in, nerds. And you can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/ckunzelman, twitter.com/rangetouch. Give us a follow. We will tweet about things that matter for Range Touch people. You can also find us on Instagram, where I made some funny videos a month ago. Basically, whenever we're together physically, I will make Instagram videos and I put them up. There'll probably be some up this weekend that'll show up after this episode comes out. So,
the yearly con.
Range Touchathon.
It'll be fun.
Probably should have a different name.
Yeah, we
Danny,
need to.
Where can they find you on the internet?
Just clear your mind when you're on Google's homepage, and then close the window, and then go to your bed, and just lay down, and I will come to you in your dreams.
That seems bad. That seems like that's not good at all. It seems very scary. Okay, well, that's it for this episode. Come back in about a month, and we'll have another episode for you. We'll be starting Icewind Dale. Thanks so much for listening, and we're never going to talk about this game again.
It's gone. We didn't even do this. Don't mention it. Ciao.
In the year of the turret, a great host will come from the east like a plague of locusts. So saith the wise Alondo. When shadows descend upon the lands, our divine Lord will walk alongside us as he walks. So saith the great Alondo.